The thing about silence is you never know when it's hiding the loudest truth. That's how this story begins. Not with shouting, not with alarms, but with a quiet young woman stepping into a room full of men who had already decided what she was worth. They thought they knew her. Agent Selene Kade, 28 years old, 5 months into her new posting at Raven Rock Border Control Station. They thought she was just a desk transfer from DC, someone who'd never seen real heat, real blood, real border work. To them, she was background noise. They were wrong. And before we begin, if you believe respect is earned by actions, not titles, make sure to like and subscribe right now. Because what you're about to hear, it proves just that. The sun had just started its slow climb over the jagged ridges beyond the Rio Estrella border, painting the sand in molten streaks of orange and gold. Inside the outpost, though, the light felt colder, filtered through dust-coated windows and the buzzing glare of fluorescent bulbs. A kettle hissed faintly in the corner as agents shuffled papers, clicked pens, and traded half-asleep jokes about caffeine and night patrols. Selene walked in without a word, black tactical jacket zipped to her collar, hair pulled back tight, boots hitting the floor in quiet, deliberate rhythm. A small leather-bound notebook rested in her hand, edges worn, pages filled with her observations, though no one had ever asked what she was writing. They didn't notice her, not really. Not until she stepped up to the ops table, scanning the thermal feeds like she'd done 100 mornings before. The monitors were alive with slow, pulsing signatures, stretching across Sector 7 to Sector 9, small blips marking wildlife, wind, and movement patterns. Something caught her eye. A shape, faint, just at the edges of thermal range. It wasn't big, but it was too precise to be random, shadows moving against the wind. Her brow furrowed. She tapped the screen lightly, zooming in, cross-referencing timestamp data. Sector 7, she murmured under her breath, almost to herself. Pattern deviation, 40 meters off the fence line. But her voice carried farther than she intended. Across the room, Senior Agent Rick Donahue, built like a linebacker with 20 years in field ops, chuckled without looking up from his mug. Pattern deviation, he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Look, Princess, you might have read a manual or two, but out here, that little blip's probably a rabbit. Maybe a jackal if you're lucky. A few nearby agents snickered under their breath. One of them muttered just loud enough. Guess the DC paperwork queen's hunting ghosts now. Selene didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her pen hovered over her notebook, and in one quick, steady motion, she drew a small circle around the coordinates. Then, calmly, evenly, she said, I want a visual sweep on Sector 7. That made heads turn. Rick leaned back in his chair, boots on the edge of the desk, smirk plastered across his face. You want a sweep? He said, mocking credulity dripping from his voice. That's cute. But here's how this works, Kade. The veterans make the calls, the rookies fetch coffee and try not to trip on the cables. Got it. She turned toward him, unflinching. Got it, she said softly. Request still stands. Laughter rippled through the room, low but sharp, cutting through the hum of servers and radio chatter. Someone coughed out a joke about rookies playing Navy SEAL, and Rick grinned wider, proud of himself. Selene said nothing more, but her hand tightened on the notebook. By mid-morning, the station had settled back into routine, reports filed, patrol rotations updated, thermal feeds scrolling on autopilot. The desert outside simmered in silence, the wind sweeping dust trails across the dry, brittle earth. And yet, Selene kept watching. Every few minutes, her gaze flicked back to the thermal feed, tracing the blips across Sector 7. The pattern had shifted slightly again, small, deliberate movements that curved against the natural terrain. Her pen moved swiftly now, sketching arcs, timings, distances. She compared last week's data against today's. Her jaw tightened. She knew what she was looking at. Recon. Coordinated, staggered movements. Whoever was out there wasn't wandering. They were mapping entry points, testing response times. She clicked the comm switch on her headset. Her voice was calm, neutral. Ups, this is Kate. I'm recommending a live drone sweep on 7 through 9. Do we have eyes available? The response came seconds later, tinny and flat, through the speakers. Negative, Kate. Drone teams are locked down on priority inspections. Low threat index out there. Pole position. She exhaled quietly, not frustration, just calculation. By noon, the shift was restless. Rick Donahue's voice boomed from the corner, retelling some old field story about catching a smuggler disguised as a shepherd, a tale he'd clearly polished for laughs. A few agents leaned on counters, pretending to listen while scrolling on their phones. Selene wasn't among them. She was standing by the eastern window now, scanning the ridges through a handheld scope. The sunlight reflected sharply off something far off the horizon, a glint, just for a second, before vanishing. Her throat went dry. She turned back to the room. Sector 7. Now. Her voice cut sharper this time, pulling more than a few heads up. Rick's laughter stopped. He lowered his mug slowly, eyes narrowing. Try that again, rookie. She faced him, her notebook open in one hand, the scope still hanging from her wrist. Movement patterns confirm a recon sweep, she said evenly. This isn't wildlife. And it isn't random. Rick stood now, looming, boots scraping against the linoleum as he crossed the room. You trying to run this station? He barked, just inches from her face. Because out here, little Miss DC, you don't give orders. Silence fell. Every agent in the room was watching now, some smirking, others uneasy. Selene's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. I'm not giving orders, she said softly. I'm keeping you alive. The room froze for a heartbeat. Then Rick scoffed loudly, throwing his hands up, forcing a laugh he didn't really feel. Right? Sure. Wolves in the desert. Maybe Bigfoot's out there too. But Selene's pen scratched across the page once more, steady, deliberate. 1407. Movement confirmed. Escalation likely. In the far corner, Agent Torres, the youngest on the floor aside from Selene, frowned quietly. He'd been watching her for days, noting how her reports lined up almost eerily with anomalies the others ignored. He didn't laugh like the rest. He didn't join Rick's whispers. Something in her posture, the precision of her notes, the way her eyes tracked everything. It reminded him of his father's stories about the old Black Ops crews, the ones no one ever admitted existed. Something about Selene didn't fit the file they'd been handed. That night, just as the shift rotated out, the Sector 9 feed glitched once. Then twice. Then black. Selene's head snapped up instantly, her voice calm but cutting. Sector 9 perimeter offline. Rick waved it off without even glancing at the monitors. Tech hiccup. It happens all the time. Selene leaned closer to the screen, zooming in on a frozen frame. She traced her finger over faint, blurred silhouettes at the fence line. Figures moving in single file, low to the ground, almost invisible against the desert backdrop. That's not a hiccup, she whispered. Her hand hovered over the comm switch, knuckles pale. She hesitated for just a moment, then closed her notebook slowly, almost ceremonially. Because she knew. The part no one else in that room understood, not yet, was that Raven Rock wasn't just another checkpoint. It was sitting on top of something bigger, something older. And if what she suspected was true, this wasn't going to be a quiet night. They thought she was just a rookie. They thought she was guessing. But the night the cameras went dark, Selene Kade would make a single radio call that would change everything. Sometimes the loudest room falls silent, with just 4 words. And that silence came faster than anyone expected. The sun had burned itself down to a dim orange blade on the horizon when it happened. The radios hissed softly, the ops floor humming with lazy conversation, mugs clinking, pens scratching. Then the lights above flickered, once, twice, and the Sector 9 cameras died completely. Selene Kade didn't move at first. She stared at the frozen frame, pupils narrowing, her finger tracing over the faint silhouettes she'd spotted hours earlier. She didn't need confirmation now. She already knew. Sector 9 perimeter offline, she said calmly, voice steady, controlled. Across the room, Rick Donahue didn't even glance up from his phone. Tech hiccup, he muttered lazily. Happens every week. Selene leaned over the console, zooming in on the grainy playback before it fully collapsed into static. Figures. Low silhouettes. Too precise to be shadows. Too deliberate to be chance. She didn't hesitate anymore. That's no glitch, she said firmly, already sliding her headset on. We've got contact. Rick laughed, loud, exaggerated, the kind of laugh designed for an audience. Contact. Out here? Sweetheart, that's wind. Or maybe the raccoons formed a militia. A few agents chuckled, but the sound didn't stick this time. There was something in Selene's tone, measured, absolute, that didn't leave much room for mockery. She didn't look at Rick. She didn't look at anyone. Selene reached forward, flipping the encrypted channel switch to the highest clearance band on the station's comms, a setting none of the other agents had ever touched before. The red light above it blinked to life. And then, calmly, without raising her voice, she said the 4 words that would rewrite every assumption in that room. Wolfguard Level 9. Secure sector. For a heartbeat, no one breathed, and then the room exploded into chaos. Within seconds, every console in the ops floor lit up. Red warning banners swept across secure monitors none of them had ever seen activated before. A loud, shrill tone cut through the base's PA system, not the standard alert, but a code-level frequency reserved for classified emergencies. Rick stared, frozen halfway between a smirk and confusion. What the hell is Wolfguard? He muttered under his breath. Selene didn't answer. She was already on the move, grabbing her field vest from the back of her chair, flipping the Velcro straps with practiced speed. Agent Torres, the only one who hadn't laughed at her all day, stood slowly, his voice low but sharp. That's not a normal protocol, is it? Selene glanced at him for the first time all shift. Her answer was simple. No, it isn't. 30 seconds later, the station commander burst onto the ops floor, boots hammering the linoleum. Commander Briggs was a square-jawed career officer with 25 years under his belt, the kind of man who never looked rattled. But right now he was pale. Who initiated Wolfguard? He barked, scanning the room. Breath clipped, jaw tight. Selene didn't hesitate. I did, sir. The room froze again. Briggs's voice dropped, slower now, deliberate, like he was trying to confirm a nightmare he didn't want to believe. Agent Kade, he said carefully, you better start explaining why you just tripped the single most restricted security protocol on this border. Selene turned to him fully now, calm, collected, and deadly certain. Because Sector 9's been compromised, she said, sliding her notebook across the ops table. Coordinated recon patterns. Blind spots hit on rotation. We've got 14 inbound. Minimum. Rick coughed, choking on his disbelief. 14 what? She looked him dead in the eye. Operators. That was the last laugh in the room. Rick opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. And then, before anyone could ask more questions, the deep, throaty rumble of engines cut through the still evening air outside the station. Tires on gravel. Boots hitting dirt. Black SUVs, 3 of them, unmarked. Every head in the room turned toward the sound. Within seconds, 6 armed operators in charcoal gray uniforms swept into the compound, silent and fast, their gear stripped of any branch insignia except for one small silver emblem pinned to their chests, a wolf's head etched over a 9-point shield. Rick blinked, whispering to no one in particular. Wolfguard is real. The lead operator, tall, armored, visor pulled low, stepped inside the ops room without knocking. Commander Briggs, he said curtly. You've got 14 hostiles moving southeast along your outer fence line. We'll handle containment. Briggs blinked. How did you? The operator cut him off, glancing at Selene. Because she called us, he said simply. Then, turning slightly, he added, Commander Kade. Rick turned, face pale, voice breaking on the words. Commander? Selene didn't answer him. She didn't have to. She tightened her vest, clipped her comms unit, and pulled a small black badge from her pocket, something no one in that room had seen before. Stamped into the matte surface was a single clearance code, Strat OPS 117B. For the first time since she'd walked into Raven Rock, silence wasn't dismissive. It was respect. The Wolfguard leader gave a short, sharp nod. Perimeter drones are online. Air support's 2 minutes out. We've got this. Selene's reply was steady. No hesitation, no pride. No, we do this together. Outside, the first drones launched, slicing across the sky, their low hum mixing with the rising tension in the room. On the monitors, hostile heat signatures began to materialize one by one. Faint, blurred, but closing fast. Rick swallowed hard, finally understanding what Selene had seen before anyone else. You knew, he whispered. She adjusted her headset without looking at him. I warned you. They thought she was guessing. They thought she was paranoid. But now, under a setting sun and an advancing threat, Raven Rock wasn't laughing anymore. Because when she said 4 words into that radio, the world shifted, and no one there would ever forget what came next. The night had swallowed the desert whole, the last threads of sunlight fading behind the jagged ridges. Raven Rock Border Station was quiet. Too quiet, the silence thick enough to make the hum of the servers sound deafening. Then the first alert pinged. The monitors lit up with real-time thermal scans from Wolfguard's drones, stark white heat signatures crawling across the black terrain. 14 hostiles, moving low, cutting across the sand in tight formation. Whoever they weren't amateurs. Selene Kade stood at the center of the ops floor, headset on, eyes fixed on the live feed. Around her, agents shifted restlessly, the weight of realization pressing down hard. A few of them exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke. Not after what they'd seen. The Wolfguard leader, Commander Rourke, call sign Spectre, paced to Selene's side, tapping an encrypted tablet strapped to his forearm. "Confirmed," he said quietly. 14 inbound. Armed. Coordinated. Selene nodded once. Calm. Collected. The same composure she'd carried all day, now sharpened into command. "We intercept before the ridge," she said. "Sector 9 choke point. No noise until my mark." Rick Donahue, standing near the back, looked like he'd swallowed glass. He wanted to speak, to say something, maybe to apologize, maybe to justify, but the words stayed trapped behind his clenched jaw. Outside, boots crunched against sand as Wolfguard operators fanned out, shadows among shadows. Their rifles gleamed faintly beneath the floodlights before they slipped beyond them, into the jagged emptiness where the ridge cut deep into the earth. Selene followed, headset wire trailing, vest strapped tight. And for the first time since stepping into Raven Rock, no one tried to stop her. Minutes stretched like hours. The wind carried whispers of sand across the fence line, and the distant hum of drones pulsed softly above them. Selene crouched behind a jagged rock, her eyes locked on the faint movement ahead. The intruders were close now, too close. Spectre's voice came low through her comms. "Targets at 25 meters. Do we engage?" Selene's fingers hovered over the trigger of her mic. She inhaled slowly, steadying her breath. Then, just loud enough for every Wolfguard unit to hear, she said, "Execute containment." The desert lit up. A sudden crackle of suppressed fires shattered the silence. Shadow met shadow as Wolfguard swept down like a single living organism, silent, precise, merciless. Hostiles dropped one by one, their formation collapsing before they realized they'd been seen. Inside the ops room, agents stood frozen, staring at the monitors in stunned silence as they watched the battle unfold in real time. Watching Selene's plan unfold exactly as she'd mapped it, down to the last second. Within 3 minutes, it was over. Sector 9 secure. Spectre's voice came through, crisp and even. No losses. Selene lowered her headset slowly, her breathing calm but deep. Around her, the Raven Rock agents just stared, their pride dissolving into quiet awe. For the first time since she'd arrived, Rick Donahue stepped forward. He swallowed hard. The smirk he'd worn all day nowhere to be found. I misjudged you," he said softly. Selene didn't look at him, didn't gloat, didn't need to. "I warned you," she said simply, walking past him toward the command deck. An hour later, the station assembled in the main briefing room. Commander Briggs stood at the podium, posture rigid, voice steady but heavy with meaning. "Today," he began, scanning the room, "one of our own issued an order that none of us understood. Some of you doubted her. Some of you mocked her." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "But that order activated a defense network none of us even knew existed. And tonight, it's saved this station." He turned to Selene, jaw tightening. Then, slowly, Briggs raised his hand to salute. One by one, every agent followed. Even Rick. Selene returned the salute, just slightly. Not prideful, not smug. Quiet. Controlled. Exactly who she'd always been. She didn't demand respect. She earned it. And that night, Raven Rock learned something they'll never forget. That sometimes, the people you dismiss are the ones carrying the weight of your safety on their shoulders. Selene Kade never raised her voice. She never shouted. But when she finally spoke 4 words into that radio, the entire desert listened.